Hey everybody, welcome to the commentary for the VeggieTales Little Drummer Boy. My name is Brian Roberts, and I directed this episode.
And my name is Mike Nawrocki, and I wrote this episode.
And my name is Leslie Ferrell, and I watched the budget on this episode.
Leslie is our executive producer and general manager here at Big Idea.
That's right.
And we love having her with us for her executive perspective on the work we do here.
That's right. Yeah.
I made sure that Bob and Larry's clothes were not too expensive. You know, their tastes have gotten a little bit more pricey over the years.
Well, remember that, like in the early shows, Mike, how when a character would wear like a shirt, it was just
so
like
amazing.
a sticker. No, it would be,
Yeah.
it would just be like painted onto their body.
Right, right.
And maybe you would model a collar.
It was all spandex clothing, really.
It was.
And now they're doing designer labels and
And
accessories.
there's nice flow and frill.
Yeah.
I just saw a little dickie on Mr. Lunt there in the opening.
A dickie?
A dickie, isn't that one of those little things, those little fluffy things you're wearing?
Don't you have to have a neck to wear a dickie?
That's an ascot.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it
oh,
was
yeah,
an
an
ascot.
ascot. I was thinking
A
doily
dickie is a
first.
fake turtleneck.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, that's right. My goodness.
It's like
she
just a
knows
little
this.
fake turtleneck.
Leslie's a fashionista. She's actually wearing a black dress right now as we're talking on
She
this
is.
commentary.
So
as
this
Brian and I are in our
show,
jeans and flip-flops.
this show goes straight into the show. It doesn't have a countertop, but this segment in the living room acts as kind of a countertop because it's a beginning and an end, but we cut into it in the middle as well as Pa is telling the story.
It's sort of Princess Bride-ish in its telling, with Grandpa telling the little boy the story.
Now, it was fun here because we got to recreate Junior's living room, which we hadn't seen, I think, since Where's God When I'm Scared. Was the last time we were in his living room.
I think so. Which piece of trivia here was designed after Phil Vischer's living room in Andersonville, the house he and Lisa were renting back when we made the first show. So
that's-
that was an exact duplicate of that house in Andersonville.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we've updated it a bit. We added the fireplace and had to put the HDTV over the fireplace.
That's right. That's how it goes.
Because that's
these
what
days.
everyone does these days.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the new American home.
It-
And look at Junior. He's
Absolutely is.
even got a, can I say the brand name?
He has a Peapod.
Yes.
Yeah, Peapod. Yeah.
Yes, his Peapod music player.
That's right. That was a good touch, by the way, him drumming on the lampshade and having the light go off.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I like that.
Directing.
Yeah. In the script, it just says the light burns out.
Yeah. So we had some fun here with showing Junior as an aspiring drummer, as that tied into the story of the little drummer boy. So this is fun here.
Oh, remember that, Leslie? You remember
Yes.
that gag right there, that clangy cat?
Yes,
At
we
first,
went
it was
over and over on that
At first, it
joke.
was a possum.
First, it's morphed
And then it was
from
a-
possums.
Oh no! At first, it was a broken water heater
Oh,
to
yeah.
to a
Yep.
possum. To
And then
a
it was
cat.
don't forget the fighting robots.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that
There
that,
was fighting robots.
that joke got a lot of revisions.
So this is fun for me. Annie's voice in the show was done by my daughter. It was originally Phil Vischer's daughter, Sydney.
Yeah, Sydney.
No, Shelby. First daughter, Shelby.
Oh yeah, Shelby.
It was Shelby,
Sorry. Yeah.
and then when Shelby got too old, then Mike's daughter Allie did it for a while. And then Allie was getting into the teenage years. And
Yep, she's a teenager now. 13.
so it was like, well, it's time for a new Annie, and I
Yeah.
said, well, what about my daughter? So we're kind of continuing the lineage of that role,
That's right.
and I'm proud of what a good job she did.
That's great.
That TV looks a little too widescreen for me. It looks just a
A little
little
more
bit-
than 16 by
yeah,
9.
a little
Well,
more. It's like 29.
It's an 18 by 9,
Okay.
which is how the veggies do it.
Okay.
So poor Junior's just had his little bit of loss here. He's feeling angry about his friends who he thinks have dissed him or ditched him, I think he says.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can stay here with me and I can read you a Christmas story.
I had no idea Little Drummer Boy was such a large book.
It's a classic. Speaking
like-
of classics,
It wasn't written by Tolstoy, Little Drummer Boy, by Leo Tolstoy.
so that's the unexpurgated version.
And I've got
That's the unedited.
Speaking of written by, the original version was written by Romeo Mueller, and
Right.
so we adapted his original version, which was a wonderful original story.
Which is something it kind of came up over the years when we would talk about doing a Christmas show. We would be like, man, it would be really fun to do a biblical Christmas show set in biblical times. We kind of would always get hung up on the Yeah, but then you'd have to show baby Jesus in a manger.
Right.
And so we never really felt comfortable with that. But then as we were looking at The Little Drummer Boy, the original, well, they didn't even show baby Jesus in the manger. They showed it as this light coming from the manger. And we said, we kind of looked at that when we were talking about the possibility of doing a Little Drummer Boy in veggie style. We said, well, we could just do it that way. And so you'll see at the end, that's how we did it. You know, gosh,
And I think
I wish I
this-
had my facts. What year did the original Little Drummer Boy get released or get
Gosh.
broadcast?
I don't know, but I know, when we mentioned that we're
iPhone.
doing this story, it's amazing, how many folks grew up on the Little Drummer Boy story. It has such a kind of timeless, perennial classic feel to it. People grew up on seeing this story, and, it was on TV specials.
It's
and
one of
of
those
course-
mandatory viewings every year.
Yes,
The
yeah.
drums, when he played, the animals danced.
Yeah, and I remember when we had the first viewing in here, Leslie, when you were pitching the idea of doing this story, and it'd been years and years since I've seen it, of course, so I remembered the song, but there was so much about the story itself that I had forgotten, and even the animation, Rankin Bass did some better looking pieces than Little Drummer Boy, but it was just really just a real throwback to see the old animation and to see it play through, and then figuring out, okay, how could we take this and make it into something that works with VeggieTales.
Right.
So that was
And
the
also
challenge.
kind of, bring the story forward because, of course, at the time that story was produced, by today's standards, it might seem a bit dated.
Right,
So
exactly.
I think
yeah.
that was a challenge too,
Oh,
was
yeah.
to kind of update, refresh, and vegetize the story, which,
Yeah.
Well, one of the challenges too is we had to make it longer.
Yeah.
It was originally basically a half-hour special.
Which was, I guess, 24, 25 minutes
Yeah.
with commercial breaks.
Probably used to be longer, but every year it gets a little shorter as they make the commercial breaks longer and longer.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely a challenge. Just creatively, it was taking basically a 30-minute story and making it fill out a 45-minute episode. I think one of the ways, Mike, that you helped do that was in your addition of extra characters that you brought in the writing process.
Yeah, to
like
the
Ben Haramid's troupe.
his troupe, we gave him a little bit more presence than they had in the
Right.
original
In the original,
story.
he had Ali as his kind of sidekick,
Right.
but then he got to the town, and all of a sudden he had other people working for him.
Yeah, he had the acrobats and that sort of thing. Yeah, but
so
just
we
to have
really
a bigger
filled
troupe.
out his ranks and made those, I think,
Yeah.
really engaging characters.
And
Filled it out with our veggies.
And the bookend stories helped too, with Paul and Junior, because that, as a way of framing the story and framing the lesson. That coming back like in scenes like this.
Speaking of the bookend story, I love here how Pa is basically teasing Junior. Junior was so reluctant, didn't want to hear the story at the beginning. And now Pa basically knows he's got him hooked.
Right,
And he's
right.
almost like a cat playing with a cat toy. Like he's just toying with him.
Right.
It's in a non-hurtful way, obviously, but
Oh yeah.
I just love how Pa messes with him.
Yeah.
Interrupting the story in like the most dramatic part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is always a tough part of any children's story, because in the scene prior here, we just discovered that Aaron lost his parents.
Yeah,
Which
and that was
is-
one of the big challenges
That's
from
a
the
big
original script, because
challenge.
it was a pretty violent scene in the original Little Drummer Boy where, we get that his parents are killed and the farm is burned and everything, and we wanted to tone that down a little bit, and we were struggling, with that. Do we keep it the same to, actually have his parents die, or
Plus,
do
it
we
had happened in
bring them
flashback in
back?
the original.
Yeah.
It happened kind of
Yeah.
midway through the story. You didn't
Yeah.
really know why. You just knew Aaron was upset and
That's right.
and kind of a grump, and you didn't
Yeah.
know why
Yeah.
until later. We felt like just to establish his character more clearly and relate to him more as the audience, that getting that information out at the beginning would kind of help us engage him more as
To
a
identify.
character.
And a word about veggies in the desert. I don't think we've done this since Josh and the Big Wall.
Veggies in the desert?
Yeah, veggies in the desert.
We had a desert in Abe and Sarah.
Maybe Abe
It
and
was
Sarah.
a different looking
yeah.
desert.
Right.
Yeah, but this is just this very simple, stylized, desert look. It's been a while since we've done it. So, but it's
Yeah, when we were talking about keeping it so simple at the beginning, I was really clear that I want it to be very simple and very clean, but it needs to be lit really, really well.
Yeah.
Or else it's not going to be interesting visually, and I'm really happy with how all that came together.
Does Ben Haramed use Grecian formula on his mustache? It's awfully
He
shiny.
does have a very, very shiny mustache.
Yeah.
I love this joke about
This
how
is a great
Lunt
scene
only
here,
juggles two things.
I love how his turban catches on fire. And
That was a fun effect. You could tell we have some really dedicated effects artists working on our shows, and
Yeah.
and they have way too much fun on the shots that they get to work on. May and we are probably the most talented of Ben Haramed's troupe, and
Yeah.
even then they're not really that good.
Yeah.
Pretty much all they can do is make a tower and roll over.
Yeah.
We went back and forth on how much of Bernie to use, because there was some talk of, well, is it really that funny to have a comedian who's not funny?
Yeah.
And so what we decided was, well, what's funny is everyone else's reaction to the comedian who's not funny.
Yeah.
So there's always these long awkward pauses whenever he says anything.
Yeah.
and the dancing animals, I think, are something that kids will love.
Let's
just-
sure hope so.
Yeah, just how these animals kind of take on a personality. You really see how they form, that friendship and kind of band with Aaron.
They're adorable. I have to say, Samson the donkey is my personal favorite. He just is so cute. He has such cute reactions. You'll often see him like lowering his ears or sitting down, kind of a little worried. He's a little timid. Has a great personality. The camel is a leftover, or not a leftover, is a reuse, all the way back to Jonah.
Right. That's Reginald.
Reginald, exactly.
So, okay, is the background there, is it painted on brick? So, help me figure that out.
It's very special theatrical art is involved in how the actual mechanics of that object, and I can't divulge the secrets.
Well, you have a
Here's
set
our-
in a box.
Right.
You can't have all those draperies and everything. They just have to be, kind
Painted
of
on.
One
That's right.
Yeah, one step.
Here's our first real song in this show, and this replaces in the original what was "The Goose is Hanging High," a song that Ben Haramed sang about basically being opportunistic. But we wanted to focus more on Aaron and Ben Haramed's desire to, recruit Aaron.
Right.
And so that's what this song turned into, is this kind of recruitment because Ben Haramed needs Aaron. And so Mark Steele wrote this, one of our writers with Mike. And so we have this just really fun song about Ben Haramed trying to get Aaron into his group, and Aaron, fighting it because he, as he says, he just wants to be left alone.
Yeah, one of the other things that we needed to temper from the original, too, is just the angry Aaron.
Yeah.
Because
Angry
obviously
Aaron
he's
and the evil Ben Haramed.
Right. Kind of bring those both down a notch, but still keep the heart of it there because, obviously Aaron has lost everything and blames people for that and carries around,
Holds on to his hurt.
Yeah, a tremendous amount of hurt and unforgiveness. And so, just being able to strike the balance of that and still keeping it, consistent with our characters.
And I think one thing that definitely helps in making Aaron a sympathetic character, even as he's angry most of the show, is the performance by Lisa Vischer as Junior. She can't not make Junior adorable.
Yeah.
Even
yeah.
if he's saying, "I don't like people," it's like, oh, he's so cute.
So cute.
Cute,
He's
you little
so
people hater.
People hater.
Adorable.
Yeah.
But this is a great interplay here of, here they're trying to entice him with treasures. And of course he's like, I don't care about your gold.
Yeah.
Right. He just wants to be left alone.
Right.
The reason he does go along with them is because he thinks it's going to help his animals. Because he'll do anything he needs to for the animals.
Now, you're not used to directing animals with legs.
No, it's definitely a challenge. And it makes it harder.
You got to carry around a lot of apples in your pockets.
I get it, because you
Get
use
it?
the apples to get the animals to do what you
stuff,
want them
right?
to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're not real, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Oh.
I think this was a really effective storytelling tool. You know, the original story, like Mike and Brian, you all were saying, it had a certain level of harshness to it.
Yeah.
So I think another thing that this, way of having Grandpa and Junior is it softens a bit. You know, the fact that Aaron's lost without his parents, the fact that there's Ben Harriman and his crew trying to exploit his talents for their show.
Yeah.
It also adds a lot of Christmas flavor because we just get the tree and the fireplace and the stockings.
Yeah,
Right, yeah,
you
yeah.
get that
Kind of
in
those visual, that
Right.
feels like Christmas.
right.
Yeah, rather than in the desert.
Right. It's hard to make a desert feel Christmassy. We had the same issue in St. Nicholas. Most of the show is set in Greece in the daytime. That doesn't really feel like Christmas.
This is the first time ever in VeggieTales history that we've, like you mentioned earlier, Brian, taken on doing the nativity story, which really, as we've really kind of set a policy that the veggies will never depict Jesus. We
As a
just feel
vegetable.
like
As a
that's a
vegetable,
line that we
right.
don't want to cross.
In the past,
Right.
we've done it like through a stained glass window.
Right, for the
on an
Easter
Easter
Carol.
Carol.
Right.
So we were just so glad to be able to do the story. What's so iconic to the Christian faith, and to have VeggieTales tell the story, and of course to tell it from the point of view of a small boy living during the time of Jesus' birth.
Yeah, and that's the other thing we wanted to kind of, and we make mention of that in the script itself. That, I think myself as a child growing up, I was confused over, well, is the little drummer boy story in the Bible? Because you watch, it's like, oh, he's at the nativity, it must be in the Bible. So we wanted to be clear in saying, okay, no, this is not a story in the Bible. It's inspired by the story of Jesus' birth from the Bible.
You'll see the crowd has slushies, and that's going to be important later. You don't think it's important the first time you see it, but
Well,
it will be.
What about the guy with the flies buzzing around his head?
See,
That was a continuity thing. That there was one shot where where Ben Harriman says, "I can see you're a very sophisticated audience," and in the boards we showed flies buzzing around that one guy's head to basically say, "No, they're not sophisticated." But then it became a continuity issue of like, well, why are there only flies in that one shot? And so we added flies in all the shots. So it just becomes this somewhat random, hopefully funny little visual.
little Pigpen character.
Yeah, exactly. A bit like Pigpen.
Yep.
So here's the show. You can see the show. It's just falling flat on its face.
Absolutely. Which it's hard to make an entertaining show about a show that's not entertaining. But again, I think we try to do that through the awkward pauses and the fiery hats and things like that.
Right.
And by the lack of crowds coming to see the show.
Yes, it's clear that this is not a popular show because there's 3 people there.
Not a big tourist draw.
Yeah. There was a time when the scene was a fair bit longer, and we were like, okay, no, that goes on too long. Let's tighten it up a bit.
Yeah.
I do love some of the crowd reactions. There's one really vocal female crowd member the voice was done by Sarah Voorhees at Paragon, our audio studio, and we just kept getting more and more of that character because every time she talked, it just killed us because she's so angry.
She really felt the part.
She really did. She must have been
in
having
real
a bad
life,
day.
she's so sweet and nice. So to have her shouting out so angry is pretty funny.
Poor Bernie. I feel bad for him when his jokes fall flat. You can't not feel bad for Jimmy Gord.
What's a North Pole?
Right. That's an anachronism.
Oh, I love that joke.
Here come the slushies, a callback to Josh and the Big Wall, of course. That was Sarah's character there.
There you go.
Help me, Ben Harriman. You're my only hope.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. Isn't he funny, folks? Nothing like a little bubblegum humor.
We had to rewrite the line, but I didn't want to lose Sarah saying that's a bad idea, so we rewrote the line to something that would work for her to say that ain't a bad idea. That's when we added the slushies and had them throw them at them.
Okay.
here
Now,
we're
this
coming
is such a cute number.
into our next song. That Mike, you wrote this one. Can't smile without you.
And it's funny because
EWE.
this started off when I was doing the outline for the story. It started off as just a bad pun, as a placeholder for a joke, because it's spelled EWE like a sheep. And I had intended on writing something different or having a different title, but it turned out folks really like that, and they just ran away with that idea for this song.
So I noticed there's not a lot of Bob and Larry in this show. Where are they?
Well, they're coming up. They're coming up.
Oh.
Got to have some magi action here.
What's a magi?
Well, a magi is a magician of old. So we'll get to meet them later.
Oh, good. I can't wait. This was a fun little transition here where we actually show. This is basically an Aaron's imagination of in kind of his fantasy world of dancing with his animals. So we get to see Baba and Samson basically doing swing dancing. I love that move
I
from
love
Samson.
that
Oh,
move
yeah,
where
that's
he's in
great.
the back.
Just
his
such careless abandon.
head
Joie
thrown
de
back.
vivre.
It's a Dancing with the Stars moment.
I like that transition element. Was that a painted element? How did the?
I think so.
Yeah, that was a nice organic, splashy feel to it.
Right. So here Bernie's trying to help out, and it just makes Junior kind of annoyed.
Now, did Bernie donate his own wool for Junior's little jacket there? It looks
His
like
own
it's
wool?
made out of wool.
Oh, you mean did Baba?
Yeah, Baba.
Yeah.
What did I say? What did
You
I
said
say?
Bernie.
Bernie.
Oh, did I say Bernie? Oh,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Well, they shear Bernie every once in a while. It's
You should see his back hair.
And the crowd roars. They love it.
Yep. And of course Ben Haramed loves it because they start giving him money,
Yes.
and that's all he cares about. I love the sound of the money hitting the jar. So that song replaced "Dance with the Animals." I think was the song in the original there.
Yeah.
Which that was really just more of a technical problem for us that we're like, because in the original the animals were kind of taking on, looking like the sheep would look like an alligator and things like
Oh,
that. And
yeah,
we're like, I
yeah.
don't know how we can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we wrote our original swing tune for that spot.
Yeah.
And there's Junior, who could care less about the money.
And there's slushy carnage everywhere.
Yes.
And here comes the silly song, the long-awaited.
Oh, that's a nice little space that you got in there now.
Thank
It's
you.
not quite so
Used to
quick.
be too
Yeah,
close.
it used to be too close. It's like, there's the silly song.
People were laughing for the wrong reasons there.
Well, this is exciting because a lot of longtime VeggieTales may recognize this from our very first Christmas
Oh,
album, A Very
yes.
Veggie Christmas. And, there was a concept album around the veggie characters all having a Christmas party and singing songs from Christmas around the world.
At Bob's house.
At Bob's house, and they, Larry was supposed to arrange the caterer, and he kind of messed things up, and it took the caterer forever to get there. So there's a bunch of running jokes about everybody being hungry. So
Which was a bit of a challenge in the adaptation here because a lot of the funny was in waiting for Oscar, like for song after song.
Right.
And we didn't have that here, obviously.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we got a flavor of that.
Yeah, so we have some setup of just we used a few lines from the album itself as we're setting up for it. But this was just has a nice spot in my own heart. My with the last name Nawrocki, my heritage is Polish, and my grandmother from my dad's mom lived with us for many years and cooked all of these foods for us for years. So it's just something I got used to eating, and it's just been fun over the years to get feedback from other Polish Americans and people of Polish descent, just to say, oh, I love that. For me, I kind of pin it, like watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Even if you're not Greek, you can really appreciate sort of that movie because of all the traditions and things that you see in there, particular to the Greek culture.
Now, I love this song because I was a fan when it came out. It
You
came
weren't
out, I
working
think.
at Big Idea yet?
No, this came out, I think, in 1997 was when this album was released. It was the same year that Josh and the Big Wall came out. Because I remember that I bought Josh and this album at the same time at Logos Christian Bookstore in Richmond, Virginia.
Wow.
I remember very specifically buying this album because I loved it so much.
Oh, cool.
It's still one of my all-time favorite albums, and this
Yeah.
is still one of my all-time favorite Veggie songs.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the idea of animating it has come up over the years.
Yeah.
Like, there's been times we said, oh, let's do a Christmas show where we just animate the whole album.
Yeah.
We've talked about animating this silly song. This song is a silly song.
Yeah.
So it's really been a long time coming. It's something we've
Yeah.
talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And so when we found ourselves needing a Christmas silly song, we said, hey, how about Polish Christmas foods?
That's right.
We won't even have to re-record it.
That's right.
And it
And it's
actually
actually-
turned out we did have to re-record it.
Well, we did because I wanted to, and Kurt actually was the one that put the bug in my ear, saying, "Hey, why don't we just, do that?" And just reminding me of years gone by. I'm like, "Oh wow, that's a great idea."
Right.
So I went to Leslie about it, and she said, "Sure." So, but if you go back and listen to the original album, the recording equipment and just the the sequencing software that Kurt used were, just old school, and you just listen to the way we did pitch shifting. The voices were, just everything just sounded bad. So we wanted to we wanted to redo the song in a way that didn't, folks listening to it wouldn't immediately think, oh, this is different than I'm used to hearing it. Maybe it's just better. So we used the same tempo. Kurt re-recorded all the instrumentation, and then we recorded all the voices again.
But yeah, I mean, I think really performance-wise, it's hard to tell. Quality-wise, you can.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
It's funny how easily you and Phil and Lisa really dialed back into the headspace of those characters in 1997.
Yeah, Larry's voice is different now than it was back then. I mean, I've done it all along, but I did it. His voice has evolved over the years. So, if you go back to listen to the original, Larry's voice is quite different.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I personally, on a fashion statement side, the Christmas sweaters are really a nice touch.
We actually, all of those are pulls from Saint Nick.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we had
had
so many
variations.
characters that we couldn't make all new costumes. So
Yeah.
we were like, okay, we can use this from this and that from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It probably is the most characters we've ever had in a silly song.
Yeah.
Certainly in a while, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a fun thing to finally get to animate that song after all these years.
I was thinking as I was watching through this the other day, the end that comes up at the end. I wonder if that's confusing in context of the show.
I hope
if we
nobody
can-
turns off the show. after that.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if we should wipe that out.
If you
just
turned
keep it
off
on
the show,
regular
turn
one.
it back on because you're missing stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just keep that for the standalone YouTube version of it and clear out the end for the show itself.
Our good friend Tim Hodge came in and did the recording for that harmonica there. He almost always does the harmonica whenever we have a harmonica in VeggieTales.
He's the harmonica guy we know.
He's the go-to guy.
Other than Buddy Green, we've had Buddy Green play harmonica on VeggieTales projects before.
Oh.
He's a big league harmonica guy.
I didn't know there were big league harmonica guys.
There are Buddy Green, man. And
Good for
home, Home on the Range is the tune.
Yes,
Public
it is.
domain.
We made sure of it. So here we have the
Ooh,
Reveal
Now
of
we get to meet.
the Oasis.
Yep.
There's an interesting kind of visual thing in this story that, if you'll remember back to Aaron's farm at the beginning, that it was very lush and green, lots of grass and beautiful trees and things. So from the time Aaron's parents disappear, I don't want to ruin the ending for you if you haven't seen it.
I think most people watch the commentary
From
on their
that
second time through.
moment, Aaron goes to the desert and there's no green anywhere. So this is actually the first time in the story since we left the farm that we've seen anything green.
Besides vegetables.
Besides vegetables.
That's right.
We saw his star when it rose and have
There's our Star of Bethlehem. We've had that in a couple shows. That was the Star of Bethlehem was a character in St. Nicholas as well.
Uh-huh.
And that ornament.
Yeah, the one ornament
The
on
one
the tree.
ornament
Oh,
that
yeah.
isn't-
When I suggested that we put that ornament on the tree, I thought there would be other ornaments as well. I didn't think it would stick out quite so much.
Just one ornament.
Yeah, that family is a big fan of the Little Drummer Boy.
Well, they're just starting their collection.
Right. That's the 2011 ornament.
That's right.
Next year they'll get a second one.
Yeah.
So finally, some Bob and Larry. Yay!
Yay!
I remember reading the script the first time when we got to this scene. The scene felt like it read faster because it had Bob and Larry in it.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of breathe easy when Bob and Larry show up.
Exactly.
That their names were Melchior, Gaspar,
We just did something there that I think is interesting. We tried to do several places in the show where basically we said, you know, it's a common misconception that you think there's 3 wise men and there actually wasn't, but we're still doing that anyway. You know, because we're...
Oh, it's tradition.
It is tradition, exactly.
Yeah.
You
There
know,
could have been 3. It just doesn't say.
Right. It's not specific.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun to do that, to say, well, this may or may not have been what actually the way things were, but that's the way we're going to do them.
That's what we're going to do.
Because that's tradition. Love this joke with the camel falling from too much myrrh.
In his sand speeder.
Ah, that's so funny.
gonna do? We gotta get a move on.
Why the rush?
Well,
So Haramed's trying to get them to basically pay for a show, which of course doesn't go over well.
I love those little heart-shaped chairs.
From Minnesota Cuke,
Oh, is that where they're from?
the first
Oh,
one.
Okay.
I think that's funny that they don't know how to do knock-knock jokes. Like, who doesn't know how to do knock-knock jokes? They're locked up in their Magi Tower all day. No senses of humor.
Love the Herod joke is a kind of an inside joke, obviously, because, well, not inside, but, you know, the fact
Yeah, I think
that
other
the
people
wise men
besides
were,
you get it.
the wise men were running away from Herod after they saw baby Jesus.
to stay for the show, but we've gotta be on our way. We're following the star.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think my sand speeder has the energy to go on tonight. How am I going to bring them
It's a good place to talk about the animal noises. They were all done by our friend Miles, also over at Paragon. It was something I was nervous about for the whole show because animal voices are hard.
Yeah.
I personally avoid doing them as much as possible because very often they just sound like a person making an animal noise. And, I think it was important that it sounded more true than that.
Yeah.
So Miles did a fantastic job on all 3 of the animals.
Do you know if he combined his voice along with actual animal voice?
Nope, it's all him.
Digital design? No. That's cool.
Just his amazing vocal talents.
Yes, we got a live rendition when we premiered it in-house.
Right.
it seems your camel was in the right place at the right time.
I love this whole
Ruh-roh.
this whole set is so beautiful with the sunset sky in the background and the lush oasis.
The lack of light pollution in the ancient world.
Right.
See, there you see, he's so
So
mean.
angry.
Yes.
You're not going anywhere.
Oh, let him go. We're done with
Yeah, this was one of the ways that we kind of softened Ben Haramed. He never really took Aaron kind of captive. In the original, there was
Yeah,
kind of this
that
implied
kidnapping
captivity
thing.
or kidnapping thing with Aaron, and
Yeah.
we just felt like we could soften that, and so
Yeah.
it's more that Aaron owes Ben Haramed than that he's actually kind of keeping him against his will at any point.
Right.
You know, Aaron's making choices.
You know, when I first heard that sheep, I thought it was Kurt Heineke's sheep, because he has a very distinct.
I didn't know he
sheep
had
note.
sheep.
He did. You remember in the Very Veggie
Oh, you mean
Christmas?
he did the voice of a sheep?
Yeah, yeah.
You were thinking he owned
I thought
Oh,
you
you
meant
own
that
sheep.
we
Oh,
recorded
yeah,
Kurt's
yeah.
sheep. I don't think
Yeah.
they allow that in his neighborhood.
Yeah, it's against the HOA.
He has chickens, but not
He
sheep.
has chickens. No, but Kurt, in when we did "While by My Sheep" for the Very Veggie Christmas album, Phil, Kurt and I all did sheep, sort of alternating sheep, bat, 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 you know, just sort of. And Kurt has a very distinct sheep voice. Those are cool angels, by the way. They're
Yes,
very
those are
nicely
very
does.
cool.
Very nicely done.
Yeah, we had fun figuring out what they might look like. You know, we talked about like, okay, is it like Hope from Easter Carol? Is it that kind of angel? She wasn't actually an angel though. She was
Yeah.
a music box.
Right.
So you know, we played with some different ideas and finally decided, well, what if they're just light? And so did a lot of different tests on
They're-
how the
they're
light might look.
Plasma-y. They're
Exactly.
Plasmangels.
So here comes what for me was really one of the defining decisions of what we were going to do with this show. in the original, you'll remember at this moment, a carriage comes careening out of the dark and hits Baba. And as we were deciding what to do here, I came out pretty strongly that we should not kill the sheep or nearly kill the sheep with a carriage. It was something about the original that always bugged me, that felt like it was kind of out of nowhere.
The sheep is nearly killed by the carriage.
Yeah, exactly. So funny that it just was something that in the original that just never worked for me narratively as much as.
Well, I think part of the problem was that just it felt weird that the baby Jesus raised a sheep. Basically,
that was part of
from
it,
the
and
dead.
part of it was just kind of the randomness of it, the senseless act.
Yeah.
And so we took it out for a while.
Yeah.
It wasn't in there.
Right,
We were working on the show, and that just wasn't there. The twist that we had developed was, well, when he gets to the manger, his parents, who it turns out didn't die, also come there. And so that was kind of our big twist, as opposed to the baby Jesus raises the lamb from the dead.
And his parents, we saw at the early part of the story, his dad was all good with animals.
Well, so that was how we finally solved it. Is we said, okay, well, what if we bring those two things together? What if it's that the dad kind of has this healing gift, and he shows back up at the end, and so we put the carriage thing back in, and finally it kind of worked. We had what I felt was the best of both worlds. We had our veggie twist on it, which was, hey, look, the parents didn't die. They were kind of miraculously or providentially brought back together with Aaron by the star and by the birth of Jesus. But we still had all of this, what really works well emotionally, of this boy who's hurting because, his lamb has been nearly killed.
Right. And basically, he's bringing what's most important to him, and laying it at the foot of Jesus, and then, offering him his gifts, and, basically, he's able to forgive after this. So it's like Jesus lifts that burden from him.
Yeah, and that was a structural thing too that we toyed with, because at one point, we weren't talking about how Aaron was feeling that sense of forgiveness until after his parents showed back up. So it kind of, and at that point Baba was well again. So it felt like our message was, hey, you can forgive others once you get back everything that you've lost.
Right.
And it was like, wait, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So we kind of reordered things so that Aaron's heart changes first.
Right.
And then the parents are rediscovered, and we learn that Baba's going to be okay. And so ultimately, we developed, I think, a pretty successful little emotional climax here for Junior and hopefully for the audience.
Originally, I reused the line, one of the lines from the original story, which is a really, really flowery line, and we had to dial that back a little bit.
Oh, something about eons of desolation.
Yeah, exactly. And it was almost more of a tongue-in-cheek, use of it, but it just felt like, we didn't want to go
that
that.
Aaron was carrying around in his heart.
Eons of desolation that came before, and
and
we're like, that's a little heady.
That's a little King James.
Exactly.
That's right. Let's go NIV or New Living at least.
Exactly. I do visually. I love how the manger area came together. It's just this beautiful little nook, kind of in this low place in the city.
Now, did you reuse any of Jerusalem for Bethlehem?
No, Bethlehem was all new.
Was all new. Okay.
It's great because, like the dad says, it's still a miracle, so it points
Exactly.
to faith in Jesus.
Yeah.
But
And
you
it's
don't see this
providential appointment.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't see this awkward as if looking at the manger, heals.
Yeah.
Heals baby Baba.
Yeah.
Now, I asked you this before, but that's not Frosty the Snowman in the manger there, is it?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
What is that? What's that little? Those two
Little
balls of
swaddled
white.
baby Jesus.
A wrapped up baby Jesus.
Oh, it's swaddled. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
She wrapped him in swaddling clothes.
Gotcha.
That's what those are.
Gotcha.
So this is a nice wrap on the story, just as Aaron, is able to forgive by the help of Jesus those that have wronged him, much like Jesus modeled in his life.
Right.
And here we see Junior reconciling with his friends with a wrong that he felt had been done him.
Yep. Yeah.
And it turns out it was all a big misunderstanding.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But he still needed to let go of that hurt and offer the forgiveness before he realized it was a misunderstanding. It's a sweet little moment. It's fun. I love having these 4 kids together.
Mm-hmm.
Junior, Laura, Percy, and Annie just are a great little veggie gang.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of envision parents, if they're watching along with their kids, and parents are always dealing with sibling
Yes.
issues and rivalry, and how this also is very real life, that sometimes the things that are done to us we don't really understand. We can inaccurately think the motive and
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah. And just being able to approach it from that place of forgiveness,
Right.
Yeah.
And just how we can, teach our kids.
Yeah.
Love that sweet moment with the 2 of them.
And it's sweet how Junior turns around and apologizes to his grandfather, that he, didn't think it'd be interesting to spend the afternoon with him.
Right.
I think many a grandparent would love to hear that from grandkids.
So a technical question, were the inside and outside connected at all, or was that just done completely
Nope.
with cameras? Yeah, I figured.
It was all cameras. Yeah, we had a fairly significant limitation that we couldn't shoot from the inside towards the outside or vice versa. So here comes our song.
I love how we close on the manger scene.
Okay, we're not hearing this yet, but eventually this will be BB and CeCe Winan singing the Little Drummer Boy song, and I think it's going to be great.
I've heard it, and it's
Oh, yeah? Oh,
beautiful.
awesome.
I hear it in my mind, and it's fantastic.
We reached out to BB and Cece because when we thought about, what could be a duet, what kind of voices, and, could be a wonderful duet on this is called the Little Carol song, or as we all know, the Little Drummer Boy song.
Yeah.
And of course, it's been, had about 200.
200? Yeah, I think we Googled
Over
that.
200.
Over
Over
200.
200.
Over 2 million.
Yeah, we were messing with the
Versions.
numbers.
500,000 languages.
Yes, but BB and Cece are just so iconic as contemporary Christian artists, and also to the contemporary gospel genre. They are just really just legendary.
Yeah.
In terms of a pairing, and so we were thrilled that they were available, and thrilled that they were interested in participating in the project. So they just did a beautiful, beautiful duet on the song, and we think our fans will really enjoy, having them singing here, and seeing their picture on the cover, and
Yeah.
hopefully, both of
You
them.
think
of
our fans
course.
will enjoy seeing their picture on the cover?
Yes.
Yes. I know I will.
I always
and
enjoy
I'll
seeing
enjoy
pictures
hearing
of
the
famous
song when
people.
it's finally on here. I think when the song gets on here, I'm going to enjoy that. No, but I love their stuff, and I'm sure. And when did you hear the song, Leslie? When was it?
It came in. They just did it before the long weekend.
Oh, okay.
And so they had
Okay.
done the initial mix, and then they went back and they wanted to, both BB and CC wanted to do another round of it because, I think when they first delivered it, they kind of sat on it for a day and they were like, we want to do. So actually what they came the second time around with has, it has some up-tempo kind of gospel,
Oh, nice.
feel to it.
Cool.
It's fun because we're premiering this show at ICRS, which is the annual Christian retailing trade show. And when we do the show, we're going to have a gospel choir
Oh,
that
good.
we hired
Oh,
come
fun.
sing.
Yeah.
That will have been great by the time everyone listens
Oh,
to
and
it.
Yes.
the long weekend that Leslie was referring to is the 4th of July weekend, which
Right.
always works out. Whenever you do a Christmas
Yes.
show, it's in the heat of summer.
It's in the
you know,
heat
so
of
you
Well,
have
this is my 3rd Christmas show in 3 years, so
Uh-huh.
I basically I've been living Christmas for the last 3 years straight,
Yeah.
which I love. Okay, everybody, it's time to wrap up. We're so thankful for you guys that you had
We
a chance
sure
to share
are.
this time with us, and thank you so much. God bless.
See y'all later.
Bless. See you later.